Okay, we're on Hare Springs Road now. I'm going to try to abbreviate the initial approach because this approach is detailed more in the Burnt Peak video. But anyway, yeah, here's Hare Springs Road heading toward the Mount Charleston Wilderness, just heading up Hare Springs Road, parallel to Kyle Canyon Road, which is over this ridge and then beyond a bit. Anyway, to get to this point, head this direction in on Harris Springs Road. What I did is, as I mentioned, I took that Kyle Canyon Road downward from the parking area about 500 feet, took a right onto Harris Springs Road, and then headed down to where it tees off. And at that point, I took a right, and here I am up at this point. Here's a good shot of Gas Peak in the morning sunrise. And then over to the sheep range. See a little bit of it, not a whole lot. We'll see a lot more in a bit. Anyway, yeah, this is where we are. We're heading up Harris Springs Road now, and the next turn we're watching for is the turn that heads up to the La Madre Mountain Wilderness. It'll be a left turn, unmarked. Everything's unmarked out here, uh, but but yeah, left turn toward the La Madre Mountain Wilderness, and that's going to take us up toward El Bastardo on the right, Burnt Peak in the middle, La Madre Mountain on the left, and again, our goal is El Bastardo. So we're going to head up that road a bit until we find a nice ridge approach to El Bastardo. When we're on top of El Bastardo, we should be able to look down on Red Rock Canyon. Beautiful views from up there. So gives you an idea where we are. Let's continue on up Hare Springs Road. Okay, we're on Hare Springs Road now. I'm going to try to abbreviate the initial approach because this approach is detailed more in the Burnt Peak video. But anyway, yeah, here's Hare Springs Road heading toward the Mount Charleston Wilderness, just heading up Hare Springs Road, parallel to Kyle Canyon Road, which is over this ridge and then beyond a bit. Anyway, to get to this point, head this direction in on Harris Springs Road. What I did is, as I mentioned, I took that Kyle Canyon Road downward from the parking area about 500 feet, took a right onto Harris Springs Road, and then headed down to where it tees off. And at that point, I took a right, and here I am up at this point. Here's a good shot of Gas Peak in the morning sunrise. And then over to the sheep range. See a little bit of it, not a whole lot. We'll see a lot more in a bit. Anyway, yeah, this is where we are. We're heading up Harris Springs Road now, and the next turn we're watching for is the turn that heads up to the La Madre Mountain Wilderness. It'll be a left turn, unmarked. Everything's unmarked out here, uh, but but yeah, left turn toward the La Madre Mountain Wilderness, and that's going to take us up toward El Bastardo on the right, Burnt Peak in the middle, La Madre Mountain on the left, and again, our goal is El Bastardo. So we're going to head up that road a bit until we find a nice ridge approach to El Bastardo. When we're on top of El Bastardo, we should be able to look down on Red Rock Canyon. Beautiful views from up there. So gives you an idea where we are. Let's continue on up Harris Springs Road. Okay, so we're about a mile up Harris Springs Road. We passed a turnoff. There's only one substantial turnoff to the left. Again, everything's unmarked here. But anyway, we passed that. That was only a quarter mile up the road. But what I wanted to point out here is that up ahead is really the first semi-dramatic rise in the road. It's just a little hump, and once you get to this point and above that little hump, you're going to want to watch for a turnoff to the left. And you see a little turnoff here. Don't take that. That's the turnoff before the hump. You want to go up to the top here and take the next turnoff to the left after this little hump. So, and again, yeah, we're in the Joshua tree zone now, which means we're between 5 and, well, I'd say maybe 5,200 feet based on the plants that I'm looking at. Junipers also around us. Okay, so let's get to the top of this hump, look for that turnoff. Okay, here is the turnoff, and yeah, it was about 1,000 feet after that hump, so there's quite a ways to go to get to this turnoff from the hump that we looked at just a moment ago. But now you take this. By the way, there's another turnoff to this road too, just a little further up Harris Springs Road. So if you miss it, then you can backtrack. The turnoffs kind of make a T or a triangle to Harris Springs Road. And this is actually the La Madre Mountains Wilderness Area turnoff. And you can look on the map on the linked page on Las Vegas Area Trails. Once I get that page up, should be within a week. And look on the linked page. You can see the map that'll show you where this turnoff is. But just realize we're about 2 miles into this adventure now, and so yeah, we've gone about a couple miles, and you could do all this with a good 4-wheel drive vehicle, save yourself some walking, running, or however you manage to get through the wilderness. But the beast doesn't handle this type of road. It would swallow it up in a second. So anyway, yeah, and as you take this turnoff, it's going to take a left very soon, and you can see ahead of you. Remember those familiar mountains? There is La Madre Mountain, and then to the right of La Madre Mountain is Burnt Peak. To the right of Burnt Peak is our target, El Bastardo. So we're going to head up this road toward those mountains and be looking for a streamlined route that will take us up to El Bastardo. So there's a point where we're going to need to leave the little road that we're on here and traverse through the wilderness straight toward El Bastardo. So we'll check that out, and you'll know by the time we reach that point where it is. And by the way, just for bearings, you look in this direction. There are a few important things that you can see. One is the most obvious is Mummy Mountain. There's Mummy Mountain. And then to the left of Mummy Mountain, Charleston Peak. And to the left of Charleston Peak, you see two smaller peaks here. The one on the left is Harris Mountain. So let's see, let's take a good look. Yeah, the one on the left is Harris Mountain. Okay, so again, this is where we are. There's Harris Springs Road that we were on. Nice road, actually. In fact, in a two-wheel drive with good tires, you could take Harris Springs Road up to this little turnoff that we're on. Save yourself 2 miles, but we want the full experience here today. Okay, it's time to point out a few geographical features here. First, we're going to look at the La Madre Mountains ridgeline. And yeah, there's Little La Madre. And then to the right is La Madre Mountain. You can tell which is La Madre Mountain by that. They call it a scar. It's also been called Devil's Slide. I like that name better. And it's a granite, not granite, it's a limestone um, incline, very steep incline. And then you move in this direction. And yeah, here's El Padre Mountain. And then over here is Burnt Peak. And here is our target, El Bastardo. And what I'm thinking about is finding a streamlined route. And as you look through between El Bastardo and this hill closer to us on the right of El Bastardo, it looks like there's a natural valley. And I'm thinking of taking this road up to where our last chance is to turn into that natural valley and then head up that valley up toward El Bastardo, but maybe hit the La Madre Ridgeline on the right of El Bastardo, right in this lower area, and just see where we are, look down on Red Rock Canyon at that point. So we'll check that out. But here you have from El Bastardo, well, actually from Little La Madre, which again is right over here. To the right is the La Madre Mountains ridgeline. Very beautiful ridgeline. And that ridgeline goes all the way up to the Wilson ridgeline, and it meets the Wilson ridgeline up in this area. And that kind of bald spot that you see up there, that's what I've called the Wilson Ridgeline Southern High Point. Some people call it the Wilson Ridgeline Summit, but actually the summit is further up. The La Madre Mountains Ridgeline meets the Wilson Ridgeline at that high point. So somewhere between that high point and El Bastardo is a great descent into Red Rock Canyon, which lands, somewhere in the vicinity of La Madre Springs. In fact, it goes right through La Madre Springs and ends up on White Rock Mountain. But okay, let's look back at this high point. There's the Wilson Ridge. southern high point. And if you trace that high point, there's a descent, as you can see, some ridges in the way here between us and that ridge line. But you pick the ridge line up again in this area, and then it'll take you straight up to Harris Mountain, which is the summit of the Wilson Ridge. And that's why I call the other high point the Wilson Ridge Southern High Point, which is over here. And then, of course, you come in this direction and you get on to the La Madre Mountains ridgeline. And yeah, there we go. And you're back at El Bastardo. So I hope that helps. Check out the map on the linked page of Las Vegas area trails and put it on terrain and get used to seeing the difference between high and low points and being able to read your altitude, and the whole ridgeline system around us will become very apparent. And again, there's Harris Mountain at the summit of the Wilson Ridgeline. And yeah, it's the peak to the left is actually Harris Mountain. And then over here, Charleston Peak, Mummy Mountain. There's the summit of Mummy. There's the toe, I think. No, maybe not. Yeah, the toe is right here in the center. Summit and Mummy's head. And then looking more in this direction, another landmark that's helpful is Angel Peak. So I always navigate by the landmarks. That's why I like to know where they are and how they look from different angles. So we'll just pan across here. You remember the things that I pointed out. Over to El Bastardo, La Madre Mountain, where we started. Okay, and here's the road. And again, let's see what is the best route up to that La Madre Ridgeline through this valley. We're going to check it out in just a moment. Okay, command decision here. There is El Bastardo. But look how the ridgeline takes a dive to the right of El Bastardo. And that's what I want to hit. I want to hit that ridge line here to the right of El Bastardo. I don't know what's between me and that ridge line, but I do know that what I want to try to do is skirt the left side of this hill ahead right here. And somewhere between this hill and El Bastardo is going to be an approach to the La Madre Mountains ridgeline. I'm going to save El Bastardo for another day because that looks like an adventure in itself. I think by the time I got to the top of that, there'd be no chance that I'd hit the La Madre ridgeline and continue along to the descent point into Red Rock Canyon above La Madre Springs. But I think if I head right up in this direction, I've got a chance that I might be able to do that. Again, I don't know what terrain lies between where we are and that lower La Madre Ridgeline, but we're going to find out. And then here, notice the difference in the plants that you see around you. We're now into junipers and pines, not ponderosa, pinyon pine. And here's juniper with berries, mid-September. This is the road we've been ascending, and we're keeping all our reference points in mind from every point along the way, because that is our navigation. So yeah, over this hill, and then we want to look at the features of the terrain to see where is the best route to get up to the lower La Madre Ridgeline, which is over here in this area below El Bastardo. So this should be interesting. Here we go. Okay, I found a descent point from above into this wash we are now in. And this is the wash that skirts the left side of that hill that I pointed out just a moment ago. And so, yeah, let's take this wash and continue on up. There is El Bastardo to the left, Burnt Peak to the left, El Padre Mountain, and then to the left of that, La Madre Mountain. Between El Padre and La Madre is the notch that gets you down into Calico Basin. But we're going to head more over in this direction to the right of El Bastardo and catch the ridge line, the Madre Ridge line, to the right or west of El Bastardo. So here we go. Okay, time to point a few things out. We're further up in the wash and we can see the ridge line above us better. So let's first of all take a look at the wash here. I've had to weave around a few different places to find the main wash. I keep losing it, but I keep heading up the wash and eventually it widens up again. So now what we're going to do is we want to hit the La Madre Ridge line somewhere up in this area. This is just to the right of El Bastardo. And you see how the ridge line dips after El Bastardo. And we want to get up onto that ridge line. And as I'm looking at this, I'm not entirely certain, but I think that this is the point where the La Madre Ridgeline meets the Wilson Ridgeline, and a right turn at the top of that high point would put you on the Wilson Ridgeline. So in the meantime, yeah, we want to get up to the La Madre Ridgeline, but we don't want to do any more altitude gain than we have to, because what I'd like to do is descend into Red Rock Canyon. And I don't know if that's possible. Depends on the timing. I can always turn around and head back down this wash if I need to. But yeah, I'd say it's another hour at least to get up to that La Madre Ridgeline. So let's see if we can get onto this ridge in the foreground and look over the ridge and see if we can find an approach to the La Madre Ridgeline. Things might get more open and easy as we ascend in that area. So yeah, let's see what happens. Here we go. And by the way, remember that hill that we wanted to skirt on the left? That is this hill. And this wash that I'm in does the job. So that's that hill. And so eventually we're going to leave the wash and get onto one of these ridge lines ahead. Okay, as you can see, we've left that wash. I want to start hitting ridge lines. And remember, that was a target right up there. And I see a ridge line approaching that is the next ridge line over from where I am. Yeah, I left the wash, took a left, and hit some ridge lines. Now, over in this direction, El Bastardo. And then over further along, there's La Madre Mountain. So, yeah, and then just to bring it around, down in this direction is the Sheep Range, which, yeah, if you were lost, you could head toward the Sheep Range and you will hit Harris Springs Road eventually. So yeah, here's that large hill. We wanted to skirt on the left, and we have done that, or we are doing that. What I want to do though is I want to hit this ridge system to the right of where I am, and maybe they connect up ahead here, which would be really nice. And a real win would be to hit the ridge line up in this direction or right at this point, or at least at that point we'll be able to look around and see where we are in relation to the La Madre Ridge line. Again, looking through the trees over here, this is that point, I believe, where the La Madre Ridge line meets the Wilson Ridge line. And then the Wilson Ridge line heads on up in this direction, and eventually it summits at Harris Mountain, which, where is Harris Mountain? Good question. I think this is Harris Mountain and the summit of the Wilson Ridge line. We definitely don't want to go in that direction. So that's why I took a left turn from that wash, because the wash was heading up in that direction. I believe that we might have been in Harris Springs Wash, which is actually, it empties out into Upper Harris Springs Road, goes through that slot canyon. You can see Harris Springs Canyon on LasVegasAreaTrails.com, where I went through that slot canyon. No, we don't want to go down in that direction. We want to head up in this direction. So I'm going to see where we can hit the La Madre Ridgeline with the most gradual, natural incline possible in open territory. I know that's a lot to ask, but let's just see if it's possible. Here we go. And one more quick uh, recognition of where we are and the reference points around. Like I mentioned, there's the Sheep Range, and then you see this hill over here. At the base of this hill is that road we were on, coming up from Harris Springs Road, heading to the La Madre Mountains Wilderness camping area. So, yeah. And again, La Madre Mountain, El Bastardo, and my target, La Madre Ridgeline, up in this area. Okay, from another higher perspective, continuing to close in on that ridge that we saw from way below. See, there's the ridge that I want to be on. And here is El Bastardo. And in the background there is, I don't know, I think it's, yeah, it's La Madre Mountain there. And then looking back in this direction through the trees is the sheep range. So I'm on a ridge heading up in the right direction, and then looking over in this direction is Mummy Mountain and yeah, Harris Mountain up here. Yes. So over here is where the Wilson Ridge meets the La Madre Ridge, which means the La Madre Ridge again is in this direction that I've been shooting for. And again, there's El Bastardo. So that should give you an idea of where everything is. Let's see if we can get over on this far ridge and continue up toward the La Madre Ridgeline. Here we go. Well, as you can see from looking back, we have made a lot of altitude. And there's the Mount Charleston Wilderness, Angel Peak. And here's that hill we skirted to the left. And then over here is where the road goes, where we first came up from Harris Springs Road toward the La Madre campground area. So the base of this ridge. And then looking up, here is El Bastardo. Looking closer, we'll get better views upward as we go. We need to reach another high point, which I see ahead. So let's continue. Okay, here's El Bastardo. We are really close to that summit. We're not going there though. Look at this ridge line. This ridge line ahead is the La Madre ridge line. If I can get up to that ridge line, which I think I can do right through this area, it's pretty rocky, but I think I can do it. Then it's basically downhill all the way to somewhere around this point, right down there in that dip, should be the route downward to La Madre Springs. So things are looking good right now. You're looking at the Wilson Ridge line in this direction. And I'm not sure, I think that's either Harris Mountain. I think it might be Griffith Peak, actually. And Harris Mountain is over here. So Harris Mountain, Griffith Peak, and that's saddled between them. Over here, Mummy Mountain. So, yeah. And then back down this way, the way we came is Harris Springs Road area. You can see if you look carefully, you'll be able to pick out that little four-wheel drive road that I took down to Harris Springs Road, which is down there, and then over to Kyle Canyon Road. So, yeah, if I can get across this rocky section to the Madre Ridgeline, and I'm looking down and I'm seeing Calico Basin and what else? Brownstone Basin and Red Rock Canyon, Turtle Head Peak. If I can see those and I'm looking over at the Rainbow Mountains, then it is from this point up here, it's basically downhill all the way to the entrance of Red Rock Canyon. So I'm going to go for it. I had said if I get up to this ridge line by 12, that I would go ahead over the ridge line down into Red Rock Canyon. It is now 11:18, which gives me about 40 minutes to accomplish this little rocky section. And then I'm on the ridge line and it's basically downhill all the way. Okay, let's see what happens. Yes, this stretch is rocky, but it's doable. And then up the other side of this little saddle, and we're home free up on the ridge line, provided that is indeed the ridge line. It's got to be. There's El Bastardo. Here's an example of the rocks that I'm negotiating. Not really difficult, nothing beyond class 3 so far. Just a few brief scrambles. And where I need to be is right down there in that saddle below. So the big challenge is just get up to this area, and I'll probably cut across to the right rather than go up to that high point. So, hey, we'll see. Let's continue. Woohoo! This was the La Madre Ridgeline. There's looking toward El Bastardo. And here is Red Rock Canyon stretching below us. And our next target is head down to White Rock Mountain below. Circle around and then head down to the entrance of Red Rock Canyon. So yeah, a lot to do. There is Turtle Head Peak, Calico Hills, Rainbow Mountains. There's Bridge Mountain. And then over to Rainbow Mountain, Mount Wilson. And there's Potosi Mountain. So all our familiar friends up here. Now it's just a matter of heading along this ridge line until we hit the descent point, which I've done a few times, but never found it from this position. So we shall see. And we'll be heading down to La Madre Springs and then deciding which side of La Madre Mountain to descend. And yeah, that's a big question. Our goal is the Red Rock Canyon Visitor Center, where hopefully I will be picked up. We'll see. That could be a problem too. But I got to get all the way down there. So, yeah. let's get moving. It is 12:19. I wanted to get here by 12, and yeah, I'm maybe 10 minutes along. So I'm about 10 minutes behind. Okay, let's continue on. Okay, just a quick circuit. We're heading down the ridge now, along the ridge still. We haven't hit the descent point yet, but this gives you an idea. The terrain on the La Madre Ridgeline, west of El Bastardo. There's White Rock Mountain below, and there is Rocky Gap Road. So a lot of familiar places that you can find on Las Vegas area trails. A lot of great adventures. And there is where the La Madre Ridgeline meets the Wilson Ridgeline. And then over here is the southern high point on the Wilson Ridgeline. And then continuing up the Wilson Ridgeline, Harris Mountain is, where did it go? It is, yeah, I think we're looking at it, Harris Mountain. And then to the left of Harris Mountain is Griffith Peak. Behind, between the two is the, I don't know, I was going to say Mummy Mountain, but I think, yeah, this is Mummy Mountain over here. So, yeah, it's the, between the two, Harris Mountain and Griffith Peak. In fact, there I believe is Harris Mountain. And then between Harris Mountain and Griffith Peak is the southern ridge of Kyle Canyon, heading up to Charleston Peak, which you can see right behind Harris Mountain. Okay, we got a lot of ground to cover. Gotta be moving here. So here we go. Okay, sorry I didn't get the exact descent point from the ridge. I wasn't sure till I had made it part way down. And there are a series of cairns that I placed a few years ago, and they should guide you all the way down this slope. And you can see below La Madre Springs. And so we will descend to where La Madre Springs are, and then you can see the White Rock Mountain Loop. And there's White Rock Mountain, Red Rock Canyon, and Blue Diamond Hill. So now it's a matter of heading down this very steep slope and following the cairns that are going to look kind of like this. And there's another one right down in this area, right there. So yeah, you're going to switch back a very steep course and end up in that La Madre Springs Gully, and then over to the the White Rock Mountain Trail, over to Willow Spring, and then down. And that's where the races begin, because yeah, we're gonna hit the on the other side of White Rock Mountain, we're going to hit the the Grand Circle Loop Trail and take that down to the Red Rock Canyon Visitor Center. Okay, I worked my way down from the ridgeline you see above. And now we're actually on a trail of sorts with some cairns, and we're heading down to La Madre Springs Trail and then over to White Rock Mountain area. And from there we will head across Red Rock Canyon toward the visitor center. Well, curiously, I missed the miner's cabin, and now I believe I'm on the La Madre Springs Trail, heading down La Madre Springs, and I'm heading for the base of White Rock Mountain. So, onward. Wow, that was brutal. That La Madre Springs area, all the trail was overgrown. Like I said, I totally missed the miner's cabin. You can see the ridge line above where I descended. So now it's basically a run back to Red Rock Canyon entrance. Got to be there in 2 hours and 30 minutes. So here we go. Okay, now I am at the junction of the Rainbow Mountains, and the La Madre Mountains Wilderness. Here's White Rock Mountain, and heading for Willow Spring, and then making a beeline across Red Rock Canyon on the Grand Circle Loop Trail. So we'll see how that all goes. And just as a reminder, we came down somewhere from up on that ridge. So I'm running to catch my ride. Got to be there by 6:30 at the entrance of Red Rock Canyon. So we'll see how that works. It is now 4. So 2.5 hours. There's a chance. Onward. Okay, now we're on the Grand Circle Loop in Red Rock Canyon. This is the loop that's in the middle of the scenic drive. And just to give you an idea where we are, Calico Hills, Turtlehead Peak, La Madre Mountain. To the left of La Madre Mountain, there's El Bastardo. We were up there. And you see the ridge line. El Bastardo. The La Madre Ridge Line. We descended White Rock Mountain. And then the Rainbow Mountains. The lighting isn't really great, but here we are. And so, yeah, I still have, it's a little less than 2 hours to get to the entrance of Red Rock Canyon. So, continuing onward. Okay, we are now at the Red Rock Canyon Visitor Center and entrance to Red Rock Canyon. So, time for a review. I started about 11 hours ago at the Twilight Zone parking area at the intersection of Harris Springs Road and Kyle Canyon Road outside of Las Vegas. Then navigated canyons and ridges to top the La Madre Ridge. And that is up here. In fact, this area that I'm showing you is where I descended the ridge to Red Rock Canyon. And there's El Bastardo, La Madre Mountain, and here's the Red Rock Canyon Visitor Center, Calico Hills in the background, Turtlehead Peak. We saw these from above on the La Madre Ridgeline. And moving over this way, Blue Diamond Hill, Rainbow Mountains, pretty much blotted out by the setting sun right behind. So, what an experience this has been. Why did I do it? I like to make connections. I like to connect different wilderness areas, and now I have an impression of Kyle Canyon Road, Mount Charleston Wilderness. You've seen the mountains in the video already. And then Red Rock Canyon, where we are now. And we've seen the Rainbow Mountains, La Madre Mountains, the peaks of the Charleston Mountains. So all of this in my mind now is interconnected as one great wilderness area. And so that's why I do what I do here. I don't want to see the wilderness as a patchwork of isolated areas, but rather as one unified area, the way it should be. All boundaries are artificial. There are really no boundaries, and there's no better way to experience that than crossing from one wilderness area to the other. So this has been an awesome adventure. I'm signing off.